Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Welcome to the show. It is May 4th, the day after we all tried to come to terms with this astonishing news leaked from the Supreme Court. I'm still processing it. I guess I think about it more, what's most stunning to me about this is that in my lifetime, my sense of the Supreme Court is of an imperfect, to be sure, institution that nonetheless generally moved when it did to expand human rights. I mean, just in my lifetime, you had decisions in the civil rights arena, the Brown v. Board of Education, a million others. The Supreme Court in my lifetime knocked down the criminalization of homosexuality. And then relatively recently, an Obergefell said there was a fundamental right for a human being in this country to marry any other human being that they wanted to. Also in my lifetime, the Loving case, that people had the right to marry someone of another race. Expansion. And that's what's most astonishing here. For the first time that I can remember, a right that had become, just part of the air you breathe. It was a right, has been stripped, or soon will be stripped away, taken away. That is astonishing to me. It's frightening to me. Now, I said yesterday, I'm an old lady. I lived my life at a time when abortion was illegal. And then, astonishingly, I saw it legalized. What a difference it made. And now, 50 years later, we have a court that will take it away. My guest today has never known an America that didn't allow women this bodily autonomy. And she, more than most, is going to have to deal, really, in a hands-on way with the consequences of the death of Roe v. Wade. Sydney Etheridge is the CEO of Planned Parenthood of Western Pennsylvania. Sydney, I'm sorry I ranted for so long. I am just, I can't even, the more I think about it, the more angry I am getting, the more astonished I'm getting. How you doing? How are your adrenaline levels?
Oh, they have been up and down the past 36 hours. But your energy in that intro, it gave me goosebumps. And I'm just happy that people are still energized after the day we had yesterday.
Oh, gosh. Well, I would imagine that energy is going to grow because, for one thing, I'm going to assume that you at Planned Parenthood, knowing that this decision was coming down in the normal way, in June, it's expected to actually come. Mm-hmm. And I'm assuming that you were assuming that at the best possible scenario was that they would eviscerate Roe, but not totally kill it. This tells you that was, pie in the sky. So surely this didn't necessarily, it was a leak that took us all by surprise, but this outcome on this court is not surprising.
Yeah, you're so right, Lynn. I mean, we at Planned Parenthood, I think, have always been preparing for this moment. And then particularly when we knew when the case was being heard last summer and just kind of the activity around that, we knew that this was something that could definitely happen. And we have been preparing for it both here at Planned Parenthood of Western Pennsylvania, but also our affiliates across the country. I think what was just so hard was seeing it in kind of black and white when you were reading those documents from the leak. It really just solidified our worst fear that we are truly at a crisis moment for abortion access. And it just kind of kicked up our work into high gear. And I think once we kind of digested what this leak meant, it was kind of like a 1-2 punch, because it's also shocking that something was leaked from the Supreme Court, especially at this level of interest and just how controversial this case was and the hearings and this opinion we knew was going to be, that it leaked. It was kind of like a shock that even happened. And then once you read it, yeah, it was that 1-2 punch. And as someone who spent 12 years in DC, that something like this is just unheard of. And so it's really just wrapping your head around that and then activating.
You know, it occurs to me that, I mean, we use the word unprecedented about 20 times a day in this age. So we're getting used to sort of, the sucker punches, sort of getting our feet back under us after something blindsides us. But here's the reality. So in Pennsylvania, I'm seeing maps now being made of, okay, so what's this going to mean if it gets thrown back to the states, right? So there are an astonishing number of states that will immediately make abortion from conception illegal. I mean, absolutely illegal, no exceptions. About half the states are going to end up essentially, right, not having abortion available. Pennsylvania is probably one governor away from perhaps being one of those states as well, because the legislature here is totally Republican and blah, 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 blah. And the only thing that was keeping us is a Democratic governor vetoing what they do. So let's not go there, but let's stay here. Let's say that we're able, you are able to continue to provide the health services that you have, that Western Pennsylvania Planned Parenthood has provided for almost a century, I suspect. So what's going to happen, though? It's not, you're going to have women streaming in from Ohio, from West Virginia, right? I mean, how are you able, the number of places that a woman can have an abortion in Pennsylvania has shrunk to, I don't know how many. There are very few in the entire state. So how are you going to be able to absorb this greater volume of desperate women?
Yeah. So let me I can break this down from the highest level and then bring it down to what we're going to be seeing here in Pittsburgh in our own backyard. So if the Supreme Court's decision rules in the way of the opinion, we would see 26 states moving swiftly to ban abortion, with about 13 of those having laws that would go immediately into effect. And you're totally right. That means that in half the country, people would no longer have the power to make a decision about their own bodies, their pregnancy, and really their future. And so that's kind of at the big level. Luckily, right now, in Pennsylvania, we still have access to abortion care. Currently, if the ruling came out, what we saw in the opinion, Pennsylvanians could continue to come to Planned Parenthood to get an abortion, to receive their care. And so that is something that I feel very lucky for us in our state at this moment in time and for the remainder of the year. But In Pennsylvania, we already are seeing some politicians introduce in a constitutional amendment that, if it would pass, would really pave the way to ban abortion in Pennsylvania. So I think, to your point, we are kind of in a safe haven right now, but that could change. And I think if one thing we know as a country is politics and things like this can change on a dime. And so you always have to be ready. So that leads to what we're doing here and how we're trying to get ready. We know that we have our partners and our colleagues and patients from states like Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, the surrounding areas that would be in one of these 26 states that could potentially lose access to abortion. And that what we saw in Texas and what we would most likely see if this were to happen across the country is that those patients would have to go somewhere else. Just because you're banning abortion, that does not mean that you're banning the need for abortion. And so we know that these patients will have to travel. They will have to get in cars, on buses, on planes to get appointments, to get this care that they need. And so we would expect that we would see patients coming from these surrounding states, if not farther. And so we're working with our partners here in Western Pennsylvania to really think about how we can meet that demand, realizing that it is what these patients need. We need to keep our doors open. We need to continue to provide these services, and we really need to help them as they're going through this process, because we've all had to interact with the healthcare system. We know you have to get your appointment. You got to get to the appointment. You wait there. You're there. We know that's just kind of how our healthcare system operates, any visit. So just think about adding on all those additional things, thinking about having to fly to get to your appointment, thinking about having to wait overnight in a hotel to get the care that you need. Think about just the support and the emotional support you want to see from that staff, from the people who you're interacting with throughout those days. And so really not only thinking about how can we do more to increase, to meet this demand, but how are we doing it in a way that centers the patient and provides them with that compassion? Because I just think about that and all that some of our patients will have to get through to come here or to some of our partners, and how can we support them holistically as they're going through this? Because that's what our patients deserve. That's what people in this country deserve. And that's what we want to provide.
You know, I'm absolutely, I'm agreeing with everything you're saying. And you're saying compassion. And you know what I'm thinking? Money. These women, my understanding is, with all the stuff we're reading now around this, is that 75%, this is a figure I saw, of women who get abortions in this country are living below the poverty level. I don't know, but I don't know if that number is correct or not, but you have to figure an awful lot of these women do not have the monetary resources to travel. They don't have a car. They can't afford a plane ticket. They can't afford a hotel room. It seems to me that we're going to have to create something beyond your facility. You know, like a Ronald McDonald House, where these women can come and be cared for before they go to their appointment and immediately after. And again, putting in the compassion element. And there's going to have to be a lot of funds and a lot of logistical work to be done to help women who will not be in a situation to help themselves. I mean, many of them single mothers already. What do they do with their children? They have jobs that they don't get sick leave. They can't afford to miss their work. This is the kind of stuff, the human stuff in each individual case that makes my head explode.
I mean, you're completely right. I mean, we know that the people who this decision will harm the most are going to be, people with low incomes, Black, Latino, Indigenous, and other people of color disproportionately will feel the effect of this abortion ban and these restrictions. And that truly is it's just a product of our country's legacy of racism and discrimination, and not just within the healthcare system, but within so many of our societal and economic factors as well. Because as you were saying, finding things like childcare, taking time off work, navigating this transportation. It's all going to take time and money. And of course, we know there will be people in this country who will be able to hop on a plane and get the care that they need. There always has been, and there always will be. But really thinking about what we can do to support those patients who need this service and might not have the financial means or the just the economic means of figuring this all out is something we're working really closely with our partners to see and what infrastructure could be built. And of course, here at Planned Parenthood of Western Pennsylvania, we have our Vivian Campbell Fund, which is a fund for patients who come in and are seeking abortion care and services, but do not have the means to cover it. So that's a way that we can make sure that a person who comes in, regardless of where they're living or their income or any other factors, can still get the care that they need. And so I feel very lucky that we have that fund. And I know our patients are very appreciative when they can tap into it. But we also have the Western Pennsylvania Fund for Choice to help with some of these things as well. And I think given what we knew could happen with the Supreme Court, and now, of course, with this leaked opinion, we're working really closely with so many of our partners here, but also in other places as well, and tapping into the vast knowledge across our networks to really think about how can we help with some of these wraparound services that people will need, knowing that navigating a new city is hard. Finding a hotel is hard anyway. We all know when we plan trips, you spend hours combing over where's a hotel, how am I flying in, how am I getting in? And so just having to do this just to receive healthcare, it's just so daunting. And however we can build financial resources available for these patients, logistic resources available is incredibly top of mind and something we're working with in partnership. And it just feels really good that so many people are committed to trying to figure this out for our patients.
Well, yeah, I think you make a great point. And the clarification here is really that abortion will always be available to people with means. This only will impact those that already have so many struggles just keeping, things together, a roof over their heads and their children clothed and taken care of. It's just part of a war on the poor, it seems to me, in this country. Where do people do? So, money. Are you? You mentioned this Vivian Campbell Fund. Is that something? If somebody send a check to that, I really want people to know where is the smartest way to help these women.
Yeah, so of course we have our Vivian Campbell Fund, as I mentioned, and people can donate to that or just donate to Planned Parenthood of Western Pennsylvania. They can go to ppwp.org and there's a big donate button where you can identify how you want to donate and what that looks like. And so that's something that is really important to us, especially at this time when there's just so many things we want to think about doing to bolster these services for our patients and for our staff. Of course, people can volunteer their time at our health centers or with our partners at Allegheny Reproductive Healthcare. We have clinic escorts. That literally means you will be on the front lines, like opening doors for patients, making sure they get to their appointments safely. And so we're always looking for volunteers to do work like that. But we also have in-clinic opportunities and administrative opportunities if people want to just get their hands kind of dirty and get in there and help us with the work. Of course, we want people to vote as well. We know that that's going to just be so important for us as a country, and so want to encourage that. And that can help in so many ways. And then there's going to be a ton of opportunities between now and July, really, for people to get activated and to stay motivated. So people can follow us on social media at PPPWA. They can go to our website where we're going to have more information. But there will just be a lot of engagement. So if at any level, how people want to donate, whether that's time or money, we will have something for them. So they just need to reach out.
One of the things that's relatively new, I think, and some people might not know about it, is that a lot of abortions now are done with a pill. Is that called, what is that called? A medical, I get confused. Is that called a medical abortion?
It is called medication abortion.
Medication abortion. Now, it would seem that with those pills, that this could ameliorate some of these issues. If women is it legal? Do you think it'd be legal to mail pills to women in Kentucky? What is the law at this point about that kind of medical aid?
Yeah, so medication abortion is something that has been around for quite some time, actually, in this country and in others as well. And it is something that is a really wonderful option for patients depending on where they are in their pregnancy. We do offer medication abortions here in our clinic, and a lot of our affiliate partners across the country also offer it in their clinic or via telehealth. Of course, with anything, especially when we're dealing with pharmaceuticals and drugs and how that can get kind of sent out and where it can, there are things we need to be mindful of within each state that we make sure that we're in compliance with, whether that's through mailing or with a telehealth protocol. But it is definitely something we and a lot of our other affiliates and independent providers are looking at to just make the service more accessible, especially when medication abortion is such a safe process. We want to make sure that if it's a viable option and an appropriate option for a patient, that they have numerous ways of accessing it, whether that's in clinic or whether that is through a telehealth visit, whether that's through kind of mailing. And that's something that we've been exploring along with our partners in other states to think about what that could look like.
You know, it just occurred to me that when you criminalize, as the court clearly is wanting to do, when you criminalize an activity that you know will continue, that invariably forces people into the dark, into the dark alleys and into black markets. It occurs to me that the court's just creating a situation in that perhaps even criminal elements will be selling pills that are said to be, these pills that will help a woman. And that worries me as well. That are those pills real? It's frightening to think what's going to be unleashed by
Totally. And I think, we have a long history of understanding, of knowing, and so many people have personal stories of what happened when surgical abortions were illegal. And so many people who have lost people in their lives due to illegal abortions at that time. And so it is really scary to think about what this means, both just for traditional surgical abortion, but what this could mean for the medication abortion space, especially when both of those services, when done by medical professionals the way that they're being done now, are incredibly safe. It feels like such a step back. And when you're taking that step back, you're putting the lives of people, of women, people with uteruses at risk. And we already know, particularly for women, people from marginalized communities, people with low income, people of color, people from the LGBTQ plus community, our country is currently such a dangerous space and an unsafe space already. When we're adding this on top of that, it's so painful. And as a Black woman and a woman of color, it makes me really worried about where we're heading as a country.
I happened to read a piece by Michelle Goldberg today that referenced this horrific story out of Texas last month with the 26-year-old woman who went to the hospital, and the hospital ratted on her, and she was arrested and charged with murder because she had apparently tried to self-induce an abortion. And it turns out that there was judicial overreach there by the DA. And the only thing, according to Michelle Goldberg, that saved her was that Roe v. Wade, even as it existed, even in Texas, made her arrest and charge invalid. But if Roe v. Wade wasn't there, that 26-year-old woman would be looking at being tried for murder. And there are a lot of, women with miscarriages, which can, be emotionally just devastating for a woman, can look forward to being questioned, maybe by police about how it happened, right? I mean, I'm not getting, it seems like, I'm going off on some crazy paranoid, drama here, but this is all true, given these laws.
Yeah, I mean, criminalizing abortion, what that does, it directly targets physicians, medical professionals, women, any birthing person who seeks abortion care, their family, friends, kind of everyone who has the capacity to become pregnant. That's who will be a target if we start criminalizing abortion, and if this happens and if Roe's overturned, and this is where we're heading. And that is really scary, because when you kind of go through that list, that's a lot of people that are just seeking healthcare and just trying to deliver healthcare and just trying to make the right decision for their friend, for their family, for their life, for their future. And it's a terrifying place to be in, and it's a slippery slope, because as you mentioned, all of the cases when you kind of started the call, like everything that you talked about, it feels like that's a slippery slope for all of those things as well.
Yes.
And that's where it gets really scary. And as a product of an interracial marriage, it chills me to the core to just think about all that we could be losing, and personally for me, how many of those things are just cornerstones of my belief in my life.
Wow. And I did, just to add, one more distressing note here, also from Michelle Goldberg. She says the Washington Post reported Monday that anti-abortion groups and their congressional allies are already planning for a nationwide abortion ban if and when Republicans take complete power of Congress.
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing how that came out on Monday, really, and then this all kind of came out again on Tuesday. But what this really just confirms what we have all known, that the ultimate goal of these anti-abortion politicians is to just outlaw abortion, full stop, in every state in America, and that is. It's terrifying, and we need to be active, and we need to be really informed and tenacious at what we can do to try to stop that.
Well, we need to be as tenacious as the other side has been. I saw a number that just blew me away. In 1982, Pennsylvania had 41 freestanding licensed facilities that provided abortion. 1982, there were 41 facilities licensed by the state. I don't know what that number is now, but it's not even double digits, I suspect. Unbelievable. Yeah. This has been being whittled away for decades, and we've been sitting twiddling our thumbs.
Yeah, we have seen, while Pennsylvania currently does not have an abortion restriction, with the majority of our counties, I want to say about 85% of the counties in Pennsylvania have no clinics that provide abortion. And so while we do not have a state law around that bans abortion, the restriction of access and the and just what you have to do to become a provider and a facility that can provide abortion care has just gotten so hard that we have it almost feels like, especially for those people in those counties where there are no providers, that there is no care.
That it's illegal.
It is
that's
already
right.
restricted. Yeah.
Right.
And that's
right.
what's really hard. And that's what, me and my colleagues across the state that are in this space, both Planned Parenthoods and independents, are really trying to figure out how we solve that problem too, because that is unacceptable. Especially when this is care, this is legal care. It's care that people can seek and gain access to in a state like Pennsylvania, but there's just so many restrictions or limits already to the services that it makes it really hard for people to feel like they even have access at times.
That's absolutely true. So this whole thing about it's legal, but go ahead and try, because we've got hoops you could have to jump through and hurdles you got to jump over. And already for women in Pennsylvania, where it's supposedly legal, it involves traveling a long way and all this kind of stuff. And this is just constant harassment by legislation and regulation by the anti-abortion people. I'll stop because you know what, Sydney, I'm going. I just go berserk. And God bless you. I wish you all the strength and help and hopefulness you can muster. And I'll be there in any capacity. This is one of those opportunities for people who feel like everything's sort of spinning out of control and they say, oh, but what can I do? Well, here's something where you can do something. You can volunteer in some capacity. You can write a check, whatever, but get involved. This is an incredible fight that we must win. Sydney, thank you.
Thank you so much for the time. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And I also want to say a special thank you to all of our current, future, past patients and our staff, because without all of them, I wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be here. So I'm excited to keep up the fight alongside all of you.
Well, God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Sydney, thanks. Bye. Wow. It's a good thing she's young, because she's in her 30s, and she's got a fight ahead of her. And it is the young women and young men of this country who are going to have to fight the fight that us old people fought long ago. Boy, these times are really something. Really something. Also from Michelle Goldberg's piece. So abortion will probably soon be illegal in more than half of the states of this country. Some women will be forced to give birth against their will. Some will travel to states where abortion remains legal. We can expect waiting times to increase as out-of-state patients pour in. Some will have illegal abortions. Some women will end up in prison. Some, facing pregnancy complications, will see necessary treatment postponed, and some, inevitably, will die. And something else that the other side is working mightily on, and you've already seen laws being passed in states, is to give constitutional rights and personhood to zygotes, to two cells. And these, they're called fetal, it doesn't have to be a viable thing to these people to have more rights than the woman that holds the thing. And the laws in these states are being passed that would make, and this is where I mentioned miscarriage, that would make a miscarriage perhaps look like murder, fetal homicide. And we are very, very close, given what happened to the 26-year-old in Texas last month. We are very, very close to seeing women miscarry or women who attempt to end a pregnancy, however early, be treated as killers. That's where we are. I mean, I'm not even engaging in hyperbole. That's where we are. Dystopia, guys. Well, it's not. It's our reality. This is America now. Amazing. I mean, it is amazing. You see Catholic countries all over the world liberalizing these areas and women's autonomy and access to abortion. You see it in Central America, South America, Italy. And look at us, a nation that purports to be a secular nation. Looking an awful lot like we are creating a kind of Sharia law, right? And I'm using Sharia law like the Islamophobes have used it. A law based purely on fervent, unyielding religious belief and imposing that belief in often cruel and often punitive ways on people who do not subscribe to those beliefs. I ask you, that's America? Mm-hmm. We got to stop asking that question because, yes, it is. This is America. And it's America because so many Americans aren't paying attention, aren't voting, and aren't realizing what their vote means. God help us. Truly, God help us. You know, I think I broke my nose. I told you yesterday that I inadvertently punched myself while playing with my dog in my nose. It hurts so much. And there's this big whole area that's discolored and swollen, even though I'd iced it and everything, but I can barely touch it. It's not like you can put a cast on your nose, right? So I'm just, but I think I might have broken my own nose. And in some ways, I'm actually rather proud of that. I mean, at this late stage in the game, that's quite an accomplishment. Barbara sent me a quote from someone older than I by 10 years. George, is it pronounced Takei, the actor from Star Trek? Huh? Star Trek. He says this: "Listen up, friends. I've lived a long time in this country. I've experienced a lot. And I know and have a deep sense when things are beginning to spiral. We are at that point. We've been approaching it for some time, but the warning signs were in smaller, discrete pieces. The problems are systemic. Gerrymandered maps keep extremists in state houses and Congress. A rigged Senate with an archaic filibuster rule blocks needed reform. Seats on the Supreme Court are stolen through cynical ploys. Money pours in to those who enable this corruption. Well, he has eloquently and tersely, I think, put in words where we are. And of course, that could be longer. We could add to it. But wow. A life. I have a few things here that I sort of want to get in. You know, this sense, and it's the sense of the people driving this spiral downward, that somehow we are living in extraordinarily loose, licentious times brought on by people like us who want to expand people's rights and want all people, no matter who they are, to feel free and to enjoy the same opportunities as everybody else. And invariably, people who catastrophize where we are right now are people who don't really know history. And you know what? And we're finding out they don't want their children to know history either. They want and need to believe in a fairy tale, in a dream, in which we, or whatever they consider we, because it doesn't include a lot of us, that America is, you know, the shining city on a hill and all is well. And we are good. We are good beyond any other nation that ever existed. And it is such an absurd refusal to acknowledge the complexity of this country, its history, of humanity. And when people allow themselves to be that ignorant, that willfully ignorant, and insist instead on subscribing to a fairy tale as reality, that we become in a very dangerous place. We are. Very dangerous place. There are some on our side of the fence that see only the negative in American history, refuse to acknowledge the many positives. And there are others on the other side who refuse, of course, to see any of the flaws and the sins and the crimes of this country. And somewhere in the middle here are, I think, most of us, I hope to hell it's still most of us, who are willing to acknowledge the messiness of the world and of people, because we make the history that is messy and filled with evil and filled with good. I came across, and this is apropos of, I guess, we don't know nothing. I came across a book review of a book about a woman who I'd never heard of. Her name is Miriam Florence Leslie, and she lived in the 1800s. And she was a powerful Victorian woman living in New York City who ran a publishing empire inherited from one of her husbands. And she came from nothing. Her father finagled himself into a marriage with a rich plantation-owning woman in Charleston and took all her money. Then he took her slaves and moved to Louisiana. And with one of those slaves, he begot his daughter, Miriam Florence, who passed the rest of her life, who spent hours every morning putting pearl powder on her face and her hands to make her look whiter. I'm looking at a picture of her, and yeah, she could pass. She was a bigot. She was more bigoted than if she'd been born totally white. And her publications were bigoted. She, in fact, had even worked as a prostitute in New York. She'd been married more than once. I mean, her life story is unbelievable. And when she met the guy with the money and the publishing company, she was already married to a writer with syphilis and a fascination for exotic women and boys. Now, the writer went to work for the publisher, and soon the publisher left his wife to join the writer and Miriam Florence in a ménage à trois. And he made her the editor of the women's magazine. And when he died, she took the whole empire. Now, as I'm reading this, I'm thinking, wait, what? And it says here in the in this book that she used her power in her magazines and newspapers to hammer home the message that a woman's place was subservient to her husband and in the home, that a woman's place was the exact opposite of her own. She even married Oscar Wilde's brother for a little bit. I can't even figure this out. It looks like she was married 20 times. I don't know. This is during the Victorian era, and she was a big fan of Queen Victoria. And when we think of Victorians, we think of, these corseted women, and I'm looking at a picture of her, and she's corseted and blah, 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 and how those women, you couldn't even show an ankle. And then you read about what was really going on among this crowd. The lies, the deceit, the sexual, God knows what. Before it was over, she had reinvented herself again as a French baroness. And it shows an America post-Civil War history that, according to the author of the book, by the way, is titled Diamonds and Deadlines, that post-Civil War America was a greed grab. And the amount of appalling wealth that was created and the carnival of corruption that was created is awesome. We're sort of living in that kind of corrupted period again. Not sort of. We are. And I read that and I thought, things are not simple. A woman who rose, who is, half black, ended up running a huge publishing empire in New York in the 1880s and 90s. And that should be an inspiration. Man, what an outlaw she was. What an amazing woman. No, she was an horrible human being. Life, so hard. I also read a piece about how some of the Ukraine refugees, especially the elderly, that are pretty much stuck unless somebody comes and gets them and somehow gets them to safety. People in their 80s and 90s, many of whom have already suffered through World War. And some of them are Jews in Ukraine. And I read a piece about some Ukraine Jews who survived the Holocaust and are now being transported in a very dangerous trip to refuge. So they're refugees of war, again, and they're being taken to refuge in Germany. And that should tell you, right there, that should tell you all you need to know about human history. It doesn't necessarily make any sense. You could call it ironic. You could call it mind-blowing. People who in their youth ran for their lives from Germans, now being taken to those same people, be cared for. They quote a woman who's 90-something. She was interviewed. She's now in a German nursing home. And she said, they told me Germany was my best option. I told them, I hope you're right. In many cases, the Russians were their liberators. Yeah, that'll turn your head, huh? The Germans were intent on murdering them, and the Russians were their liberators. And they lived long enough to see the Russians trying to murder them and the Germans being their hope. And I think that's the kind of thing that a lot of people just can't deal with that kind of thing. They can't deal with the craziness of reality. And a lot of Americans are whistling past the graveyard these days, refusing to acknowledge where we are and the dangers that await us. And you can scream and holler as long as you want. This is real. This is real. This is not a test. Well, it is a test, but it's really happening. The spiral that George Takei is talking, we are in it. And it's not a matter, I mean, I have felt we've been in it for a long time, anybody who's been listening to me, but it is now becoming so obvious, so frighteningly obvious. I already voted in the primary. I did it by mail. I don't know who you guys are voting for. I said we all got to make these choices. Anyone who votes for any Republican in this time is just speeding up the spiral. Any Republican. Because it's not the party it was, as I've said many times. It's a white nationalist fascist party. Did you see that Dave Chappelle was attacked on stage last night? Boy, he was really attacked. I mean, some guy came running out of nowhere and just hit him like like he was in a football game, just, leapt and took him to the ground. And it turns out that the guy had what was called a replica gun that somehow had knife blades in it. So we can assume he clearly meant hurt or kill Dave Chappelle. We are in, and Dave Chappelle is, I think he's very funny much of the time. I think he's offensive some of the time, but that's what we call a comedian. These attacks on comedians are part of the censoriousness of this new America, which is scary as hell. And I don't know where that guy was coming from. I saw a picture of him being carted away in an ambulance, not Chappelle, the attacker. And it looked like Chappelle's security people were on him immediately. And from the picture, it's one of those pictures like you see sometimes when a football player goes down and like their leg is at an angle that makes no sense. Their lower leg is sticking in a way that is not no normal leg could do. The guy who attacked Chappelle, his arm, the picture I saw, I couldn't even look at it. When I looked at it and I was trying to make sense of it, his arm is like that. They like broke his arm is horrible. This is where we are. Chris Rock happened to be there, I guess. He came on stage and was making jokes about it. He said, "Was that Will Smith?" I don't know. Here's something sort of nice that I found. By the way, I had said yesterday that Susan was going to be joining us today, and obviously she did not. And that is because I had the opportunity to get Sydney Etheridge from Planned Parenthood on, and I told Susan that, and she said, "Oh, yeah, right, sure." And so Susan's going to come on tomorrow, unless, I don't know, maybe I'll get Samuel Alito on. So, I don't even have time. I see what time it is. Heck, I won't. I'm not going to do it. Way to go, Penguins! By the way, for those of you who care, they won against the Rangers the first game, and it took 3 overtimes. God, I'm glad I wasn't watching. That's the kind of thing where I'm wearing one of those heart monitors, that would not have been a good thing for me to be watching. For that matter, I can't imagine what my heart monitor was recording in parts of the interview with Sydney Etheridge either, but it'll be interesting to see. I don't know. Even my heart might have sped up a bit. So, all right, you guys, I think that's it pour moi. And I was going to say don't despair, act. Do what you can do. And if you're really wanting to help, our side damn well better stand up, every single human, in whatever way they can. As I said, write a check. Just go to Planned Parenthood's website. They are about to be challenged in a way that the current staff that exists there will not be able to handle. And remember what they're dealing with. It's not just abortion. That is not the major thing they do. They take care of mostly poor women and their health care, contraception, which might be going by the boards too. The pill will be considered something that kills or that prevents a life from happening, which could be murder. And if you take the pill, you'll end up in prison. Wow. See where they're trying to take us? Scaryville. Let's act. Definitely let's vote. All right, guys. See you tomorrow. Hang in there.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.